Blog Talk Radio.
Yes. Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom, Shavua Tov. A good, strong 7. This Shavua of the week. Here we're at the second day, Mondays, the Monday podcast here on the Ear and the Irid. And also, this right here is the eve, at the eve of the Purim, not one of the 7 commanded holidays of Yisrael, but a remembrance all the same, bringing out the book of Esther, right here. Here we have a Hebrew heroine, a female hero right here, the woman here, let us make man in our image after our likeness, male and female. So here it also corresponds with the reason for the season, the Battle of Adwa, and we recall Negissa Taitu, the queen, the consort of Dagmawi Menelik II, and her role in the redemption or the liberation, let's put it out as the liberation and keeping the people free in Ethiopia, and her role in the Battle of Adwa. So here we have another example, right, of that balance in the divinity of the Almighty and His Majesty. Here we have Esther. And Esther connected with the Shabbat, right? With the Shabbat, we have the Sabbath, actually Zakor, which was the previous Sabbath, corresponding with the 20th sabbatical study. Here we're at the 21st. We had the 20th Tetzaveh, thou shalt command, right there. And that Shabbat was the Shabbat Zakor, the Sabbath of remembrance. And that there precedes the Purim. And Purim, right? Purim lets us know that Pesach, Fasika, right, is coming up, is upcoming. So here in the season, reason for the season, from the 6th of March to the 7th of March, according to the Hebraic, the lunar solar calendar, we have the eve right here. So here we're at the eve of the Judaic holiday, holy day of Purim. This year helps us to bring out even more of the book of Esther and to put the whole scripture, especially the Hebrew Bible, into its proper context for the best and the blessed receptivity to the Brit Chadash. So we have the holiday of Purim Sameach, getting into some of the details of Purim. Why is it important? Once again, just as a reminder, it's not one of there's 7 feast days, festivals that occur in 3 seasons. Here we're in the out season. And this was like one of the holidays that recalls victory, salvation, overcoming of Jah people, such as the Maccabee fighting holiday for the Hanukkah, all right? Not one of the 7 commanded, but here's a remembrance of the people to the victories of those who had faith in Yahweh, truth, and life. So here we have Purim with Esther. And now this occurs, right? This occurs, generally speaking, on the Hebrew, the 14th, right? We have the 14th, right, day, right, of the month of Adar, right? This corresponds here in this season right here where we're at, with March 6th. All right, so Purim, by the tried and tradition, is celebrated, right, at the sundown of the 14th, all right, the sundown of the 14th of the month of Adar, according to the lunar solar, the Hebraic Judaic calendar. Now, this is the day after Haman. He's the enemy and the adversary of Yisrael, and there is an interesting connection with Esau. And with Esau is one of his grandsons, Amalek, right? With Amalek or Amalek, as one's called Amalek. And Haman is a descendant, right? One of the descendants of Amalek. And the Shabbat Zakor, the previous Shabbat, is the Sabbath of remembrance. Basically, the Bnei Yisrael were told not to forget, right, to blot out the name of our adversary of Amalek, from under the heavens. Right, so here's an interesting holiday and holy day tradition bringing out more of the essence of the book of Esther and Purim. Getting some of the details of Purim. Pur in the Hebrew, or for, or elsewhere pointed as pour. For, we say tomato, Hebraically is similar, but Purim, or Furim. Pour is like dice, something like the rolling of the dice. Redemption of Jah people, right, and the salvation of Jah people from extermination, right, in the incident that's recorded in the book of Esther. Now, Esther is interesting because Esther, her Hebrew name is Hadassah, right, Hadassah. And Hadassah, right, means like myrtle tree. It's somewhat similar Hebraically with Hadasha, but it's a different pointing. There's Hadasha and there's Hadassah. Hadassah is a myrtle tree, right? The Hadassah is the myrtle tree. Oh, hopefully we get into the metaphysics of Esther. Now, Esther, Ethiopically we say Astir, Hebraically Hester, but it connects with the name Ishtar, and then Ishtar, right, connects with what later on within the translations and among the nations comes down as Easter, right? And yes, Easter is one time in the KJV Bible, but that is another proof that it is good as a stepping stone, but it's not perfect, right? Because that should be Fasika or Pesach, and Pesach basically is Passover, right? So Purim or Purim means dice. So after Haman, or Haman, as some enunciate his name, or Haman, after Haman's roll of the dice, the Pur or the Purim, right, indicated that the 13th of that Hebrew lunar solar month of Adar was most, how do they say, propitious. You hear the Gentiles saying propitious, a propitious day. Or even they used to use in Roman times more of the fortune, like fortune. Fortune favors the brave. Well, fortune and Fortuna is one of their deities. But after Haman's roll of the dice had indicated, because he wanted to know when could he exterminate the black Jews, right, the Yehudi of Persia, right? When was the right time, right, to exterminate and set his plot into motion, right? He was stopped by a Hebrew queen named Esther, Astir, Ishtar, our Ishtar. You can even say our Easter based on the etymology of the name. So this is interesting right here. This is what we call like Purim. Is Purim, right, the Yehudi, right, the Judahite, or even you could say the, quote, Jewish Halloween is Purim. How it's celebrated and how it's observed this day, right, or nowadays Judaism. But still, there is a moral and there's wisdom to this narrative. And also what it emphasizes is that Jehovah sent saviors, right, to Yisrael Yasharala. Sometimes they were, many times, man them, but also woman them, such as we had the judge, Deborah, as well. And then also, even in these latter days and times, we had one like Empress Taitu, in the Battle of Ottawa. But after Haman had rolled the Purim, after he had rolled the Purim, the dice, and that had indicated to him that the 13th of Adar, right? So we start to think and say, wait, 13th. You know how they use that number among the Gentiles of the nation, 13, so-called unlucky or bad, or I don't know, a divine number. Ethiopically, we say 13 months of sunshine, right? And also Hebraically, sometimes there is a 13th, a 13th month, so to speak. But Haman chose on the roll of the dice, the 13th of the Hebrew month of Adar, the Judaic month of Adar, as most, quote, propitious date to exterminate the Yehudim, the Judeans, the Judahites, right? In latter day translations, often it's referred to as the Jews. So, but more specifically, we're speaking about we, the black Jews, and our ancestors, them of Persia, the Yehudim. Remember, even the king, Xerxes, Ahasuerus, according to Esther, another Ethiopian mentioned there. He ruled, right, from like India to Ethiopia and all parts in between, which is another interesting connection with this particular document. Now, let's note that Purim is celebrated the day after, So not on the 13th, right, but actually beginning on that sunset, so to speak, or the sunlight down. More correctly, it will be sunlight down, because it doesn't really go down, but it's when the light goes down, right? Because of the heavenly movements, the movement of the heavenly celestial orb, the celestial globe around the earthly plane. So it celebrates the day after. Why? Why the day after? Since it was at that time that the Judahites, the Judeans, even we, the Black Jews, right, in Persia, experienced the joy of that deliverance from a type of an extermination, a genocide. We can call it a genocide. Oh, let's note for the records that because of the word sound of Katamawi Haile Selassie, when they was translating his word sound before the nations, the League of Nations, what he said in the Amharic that the fascists and Benito Mussolini, right, and those Satanists were doing, right, against the children of the Ethiopians, likened to the children of Israel, was to destroy or to kill, right, to kill a seed. And when the translators of the words of His Majesty in the Royal Amharic at Geneva, Switzerland, were translating the literal sense of what he said in the Amharic, this is where they went back to their own Greek, you could say Greek roots, and coined the phrase to describe what His Majesty said in Amharic of genocide. We can find that in Edward Uhlendorf's translation of Hiwate Inaya Ethiopia Rimja, My Life in Ethiopia's Progress, the autobiography of Emperor Haile Selassie I, in book 1, right? In book 1. Just a little note right there, because this genocide thing, we can see certain times in history where there were genocide attempts, but here is a deliverance from that of Jah people, of the Yehudi, the Judahite people in Persia, right? Now, in the state of Israel or over in the east, in that Ethiopia, Africa, right, region, Afro-Asia region of the world, right, Purim is observed a day later still. So therefore, the 15th of Adar. So this is why for Purim in this season, ones may say, well, March, because of the alignment of the calendars, 6 and 7. So Hebraically, it would be the 14th and the 15th of the Judaic calendar, right? So it's observed a day later still, and it is called Shushan. Shushan, Shushan. I pointed out because you're reading the Bible and the Psalms, especially some of the Psalms and the superscription, the Hebrew first verse, that's a little small type in some of the Psalms, you'll come across Shushan. And Shushan, in the Hebrew, Shushan is to say lilies. We have Shushanim, or as pointed, Shoshani from Shushan. That's in the plural sense. So there's a lily, Shushan, right? Like the lily of the valley. And then we have like Shushanim or Shoshani, lilies, right? So here we have Shushan Purim. Now, what's interesting is that the word lilies also points to, literally it's lily, but then the lily in its second of the two Hebrew truths, in its, you could say in its exoteric sense, right? It is a lily. In its esoteric sense, it relates to trumpets, how a lily can resemble to some level, if you can see it, if you can receive it, a trumpet, but then it brings out the sense of witness, right? A witness. And now in the idea of witness, we also have a martyr. Now, in the Western Gentile world, often a martyr is seen as somebody who maybe been speaking out about right things but was put to death. That's usually how martyr is interpreted in the West. But even if we go back to the root, martyrios, it's a Greek word, martyrios. It actually means witnesses. So those who will bear witness to a certain thing, a belief, a principle, an idea, a truth, a God, a way, a life, are witnesses. And we all are called, right, in Yahweh Truth and Life, to be witnesses. That means to give testimony, to testify, both by the words of our mouths when necessary, but overall by our life, our liberty, our halakha, our trod, how we walk out, our liberty. But it's bringing it to the Shushan Purim. So that Shushan Purim connection there. So a key word, Shushan, and brothers and sisters who have availability, the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary of Shushan and Shoshani is very, very interesting, right? But that relates to the idea of lilies. That relates to the idea of a trumpet. And because we're beginning off right there with that right there, let's bring forward, what was it? Queen Ifrica, as she rides up the chant right here, the lily of the valley. So the Shoshan, right? The Shoshan, the Shushan, the lily, the witness, the trumpet. Lift up I voice as a trumpet. So here, Chabarim.
Let the words of
pause. Sorry. Slicha. Purim Sameach. Happy Purim, or in the sense of happy dices. Roll of the dice. The enemy rolled the dice, and our queen rolled the dice against him and spared Jah people's lives and liberty. So rise up the chant with the Queen Ifrica.
Let the words of thy mouth and the meditation of thy heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Most High Selassie, Jah Rastafari. The heavens declare the glory of the Most High, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where thy voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Rastafari, the lily of the valley. Rastafari, the bright and morning star. In them there's a tabernacle set for the sun, which has a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit upon the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. Lightning. Everyone should know. Everyone should know. Everyone should know. O Rastafari. The law of the Most High is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Most High is true, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Most High are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Most High is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Most High is clear, enduring forever. The judgments of the Most High are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, more than much fine gold. Sweeter also than the honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over I. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. Selah, Selassie. Everyone should know. Everyone should know. Rock it. Oh, Rastafari. Let the words of thy mouth and the meditation of thy heart be acceptable in thy sight. O Most High, I strength and I redeemer. Selah, Selassie. Aya Ingi. Arise, bright and morning star. Glory to word, glory to sound, glory to the power of the Most High, the Imperial Majesty, Emperor, Celestia, Empress, Menonai. I.
Psalm 48. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, is Mount Zion on the sides of the north.
Rastafari, Africa is a must. So nobody post now cause you have to jump on DJ bus, Zion born, right?
Psalm 48.
מזמור מ"ח, שיר מזמור לבני קורח.
Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. For lo, the kings were assembled. They passed by together. They saw it, and so they marveled. They were troubled and hasted away. Fear took hold upon them there, and pain as of a woman in travail. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. As we have heard, so have we seen in the city of the Lord of hosts, in the city of our God. God will establish it forever. Selah. We have thought of thy loving kindness, O God, in the midst of thy temple. According to thy name, O God, so is thy praise unto the ends of the earth. Thy right hand is full of righteousness. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let the daughters of Judah be glad because of thy judgments. Walk about Zion and go round about her. Tell the towers thereof. Mark ye well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces, that ye may tell it to the generation following. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide forever, 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 forever.
מזמור מ"ח, שיר מזמור לבני קורח. גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, בעיר אלוהינו הר קודשו. יפה נוף משוש כל הארץ, הר ציון ירכתי צפון, קריית מלך רב. אלוהים בארמנותיה נודע למשגב, כי הנה המלכים נועדו, עברו יחדיו. המה ראו כן תמהו, נבהלו נחפזו. רעדה אחזתם שם, חיל כיולדה. ברוח קדים תשבר אוניות תרשיש. כאשר שמענו כן ראינו, בעיר אדוני צבאות, בעיר אלוהינו. אלוהים יכונניה עד עולם סלע. דימינו אלוהים חסדך בקרב היכליך. כשמך אלוהים כן תהילתך על כתבי ארץ, צדק מלאה ימינך. ישמח הר ציון, תגלנה בנות יהודה למען משפטך. שובו ציון והקיפוה, ספרו מגדליה. שיטו לבכם לחילה, פסגו ארמנותיה. למען תספרו לדור אחרון, כי זה אלוהים אלוהינו עולם ועד, הוא ינהגנו על מות.
Yes, yes, yes. May I hear that chant right here in the world and heart right here. That's the evening song for the second day of the Shavuot, Psalm 48. World and heart double
Rastafari. Africa is a must. So nobody post now cause you have to jump on this bus. Zion born, right? Do it.
መዝሙር 47 በቅንፍ 48 በሁለተኛ ሰንበት የቆሬ ልጆች የምስጋና መዝሙር። እግዚአብሔር ትልቅ ነው፣ በአምላካችን ከተማ በተቀደሰው ተራራ ምስጋናው ብዙ ነው። በሰሜን ወገን በመልካም ስፍራ የቆመ የምድር ሁሉ ደስታ የጽዮን ተራራ ነው። እርሱም የትልቁ ንጉሥ ከተማ ነው። እግዚአብሔር በአዳራሾቿ መጠጊያ ሆኖ ይታወቃል። እነሆ ነገሥታት ተከማችተው በአንድነት መጥተዋል። እነርሱ ሳይተው ተደነቁ፣ ደነገጡ፣ ታወኩ። መንቀጥቀጥ እንደ ወላድ ምጥ በዚያ ያዛቸው። በኃይለኛ ነፋስ የተርሴስን መርከቦች ትሰብራለህ። እንደ ሰማን እንዲሁ አየን። በሰራዊት ጌታ ከተማ በአምላካችን ከተማ እግዚአብሔር ለዘላለም ያጸናታል። አምላክ ሆይ በአሕዛብ መካከል ምሕረትህን ተቀበል። አምላክ ሆይ እንደ ስምህ እንዲሁም እስከ ምድር ዳርቻ ድረስ ምስጋናህ ነው። ቀኝህ ጽድቅን የተሞላች ናት። አቤቱ ስለ ፍርድህ የጽዮን ተራራ ደስ ይበለው፣ የአይሁድም ሴት ልጆች ሐሴት ያድርጉ። ጽዮንን ክበቧት፣ በዙሪያዋም ተመላለሱ፣ ግንቦቿንም ቁጠሩ፣ በብርታቷ ልባችሁን አኑሩ። አዳራሿን አስቡ፣ ለሚመጣው ትውልድ ትነግሩ ዘንድ። ለዓለምና ለዘላለም ይህ አምላካችን ነው፣ እርሱም ለዘላለም ይመራናል።
Psalm 48.
מזמור מ"ח, שיר מזמור לבני קורח.
Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. For lo, the kings were assembled. They passed by together. They saw it, and so they marveled. They were troubled and hasted away. Fear took hold upon them there, and pain as of a woman in travail. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. As we have heard, so have we seen in the city of the Lord of hosts, in the city of our God. God will establish it forever. Selah. We have thought of thy loving kindness, O God, in the midst of thy temple. According to thy name, O God, so is thy praise unto the ends of the earth. Thy right hand is full of righteousness. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let the daughters of Judah be glad because of thy judgment. Walk about Zion and go round about her. Tell the towers thereof. Mark ye well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces, that ye may tell it to the generation following. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide forever, 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 forever.
Lion of Judah shall break every chain. He is the conqueror. Now we sing a song of redemption and love. Song of liberty. Remove the chains of Babylon. He said, I free out of living in poverty, out of captivity. Lion of Judah shall break every chain. He is the conqueror. Now we sing a song of redemption and love. Song of liberty. Sitting on the mountain so peaceful and high. About reality. Leading the children to do right. Reveal the prophecy. Show I the way to Mount Zion. He said, I free out of living in poverty, out of captivity. Lion of Judah shall break every chain.
Nazio Fontaine right there. I tried. And so Esther, the book of Esther, going to get into the book of Esther, going to put this into some context here. Why is this relevant? Just share something on the DSR and the WhatsApp group and some other groups. Actually, where is it right here? Let's just pull this up. Maybe ones and ones can check this out on their own right here on Esther. Let's see right here. It is on the jewishmuseum.org. They want me to get the app. Hold on for a moment. You know, they're trying to make you get the app right now. But I just want to share this right here. Okay, continue and mobile web. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is found on the Jewish Museum. I know we had done some things over the years, seeking to bring out the significance, right, of Esther and Purim. And here we have this article right here from February 27th, 2018. So a 3-minute read, and it's on the jewishmuseum.org. The title is Black History Month, Queen Esther / Harriet Tubman. Shall we? Yes, we shall. For the month of February, here we're in March, but it's coming out of what's called Black History Month. But for us in Black history, the Battle of Ottawa, and also a queen there as well, instrumental in the victory, Queen Kaitu. But here, Black History Month, Queen Esther / Harriet Tubman. For the month of February, we invited writer Antoine Sargent to explore works of art in the Jewish Museum collection that celebrate the intersection, they say, of Black and Jewish experience. One thing they can do is put the B in Black in cap. That'll be a good start right there. On the occasion of Purim, and in this year it began February 28th, Sargent examines artist Fred Wilson's Queen Esther / Harriet Tubman. So here there's a painting. Looks like an old kind of painting, but they say Fred Wilson, Queen Esther / Harriet Tubman, 1992, ink on acetate, right? It's at the Jewish Museum. But when I first saw this and looking up just a couple of pics and a couple of links for the family on Esther, on the Black Esther, and also the connection of we, the Black Jews of the line of the tribe of Judah, we saw this picture and automatically I looked at it and said, Chan, that looks just like Harriet Tubman. And actually, I think it was inspired from that, a pretty well-known picture of Harriet Tubman. But reading on, in 1992, the contemporary African-American artist Fred Wilson, known for his interventions that challenge assumptions of history, culture, race, and conventions of display in museums, gifted a work of art to the Jewish Museum collection on the occasion of the museum's 1992 Purim Ball. The work is Harriet Tubman / Queen Esther, 1992. It's an ink print that combines a 16th century engraving of Queen Esther. Okay, yes, you need to take a look of this, but here on the podcast. So get this picture, a 16th century engraving of Queen Esther, the biblical queen who saved the Persian, Yehudi, Judahites called Jews during the time of Xerxes, or in the Bible, his name Ahasuerus, that in the Western way of bringing it out, Xerxes. And so these two pictures are combined, the engraving, 16th century engraving of Queen Esther. It's interesting because when I'm like, I can see that it's kind of a split screen combination, but very well done. And both sides look like, Harriet Tubman, just keeping it real. So it combines the 16th century engraving of Queen Esther, right? And an iconic photograph of Harriet Tubman, the Black woman, I'll say the Beta Israel, the Yehudi, Judean, Judahite woman, right? Black Jew, right? Yehudi. But anyway, they say Black woman born enslaved or enslaved, who escaped to freedom and then returned to the South to save and to free other enslaved or enslaved Black people. Wilson's print is a double portrait that portrays Tubman over Queen Esther as if she is wearing a mask. Now, this is important to one of the themes that we have in the book of Esther and connected with Purim, because we have a Judahite, Judean in faith and in general, but she's of the tribe of Benjamin, right? Woman who's known by her name, Hebraically Hadassah, who takes on, right? Then because remember they're in foreign land, so they have their own Hebrew names, but then they take on. Sound familiar? They take on, you know, the language of the people. You know, like somebody take on, like you say, take on a white name or take on another name, you know, an English name or whatnot. But she takes on the name Hester or Esther, as we have it, Hester, but really Ishtar. All right, so this is you can see some of the connections there. Now with the art, he takes these two, this 16th century engraving of Queen Esther, and the double portrait, right, that portrays Tubman over Queen Esther as if she is wearing a mask. But here's what's so interesting. This 16th century painting, her stance, the stance of the 16th century portrait of Queen Esther is almost, and even the garments is almost one for one with the actual picture, right? The actual picture that we have of Harriet Tubman, as if she is wearing a mask, because that's a part of the whole reasoning of Purim. That's why I say, is it Purim? Is it Jewish, Judaic, Judahite Halloween? Right, wearing of masks, right? The image suggests the similarities of the two heroines, right, of Black and, as they say, Jewish histories. I would basically just put it the way it is, of Black Yehudi, Black Jewish history. And the enduring, they say, mythology, right, the story that is told symbolically that surrounds the woman, both Esther and, for example, right, Harriet Tubman, who risked their lives to save their persecuted people. The blurring of the woman's likenesses into one also is a gesture that the author here says, for me, alludes to the many faithless women who have stood up for their people and whom history has not recorded in its centering of narratives that favor men or the males. At its core, the image is about widening representations of history and points to persisting realities that plague both the, what they say, the Black and the Jewish communities, or even we, the Black Jews of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. The Queen Esther and Tubman image honors inspiring acts of courage by referring to the history of oppression or downpression and racial persecution that the Black and Jewish communities and we, the Black Jews of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, have both faced, as well as contemporary racism and what they refer to as anti-Semitism. You know, Hebrew is called an Afro-Semitic language. Just a point right there. Mm-hmm. So here, the Harriet Tubman photo, 1860, they say to 1875, somewhere within that window there. Harriet Tubman, 1860 to 1865. And it's really very interesting looking at the two photos. You know, I need to look at the original 16th century picture because it's like, wow. So it's almost like Harriet Tubman, when she took her photo in the 1860s to 75, you know, just the mystic of it, right? Wilson's Harriet Tubman, Queen Esther, also provides space to consider how we honor women in history. I'll say righteous women who sought to do that which was right, not just for themselves and their personal family, but for their greater family, their people. Esther's story is the basis for the annual celebration of Purim in the Jewish or Judaic tribe tradition. Harriet Tubman, however, does not enjoy a similar celebration. And I would say here, you know, until now, you know, because this is a connection. This is why we emphasize right here the Purim connection and the reality of those Black queens that did the same thing that we honor in Purim. right? In placing Tubman on par with Queen Esther, Wilson suggests not only that there are commonalities of history and circumstance within the Jewish and Black experience, go figure, right? But that Tubman is also a queen whose profile in courage, freedom, and community deserves to be celebrated. Now, many of I, even among Black people, and we would say Black conscious folks, of different, beliefs, as it were, in Black consciousness, we all kind of agree on this. We see ones like Harriet Tubman as a queen on the par with even ones like Esther. And understanding the story, the narrative of Esther, we can automatically, see many Black queens, past, present, and no doubt future. But it's interesting how the Jewish Museum is that discovered something based on the Black American, African American artist, Fred Wilson, and his very interesting artistic rendition of Harriet Tubman, Queen Esther. So here, this was in honor of Black History Month right here. Other stories from Antoine Sargent, and we share this right here. Brothers and sisters also have shared that on some of the platforms. So yes, I look up Black History Month, Queen Esther, Harriet Tubman, and the article on the Jewish Museum is particularly interesting. And here from one Esther, and Harriet Tubman, the queen, one of our Queen Esther's, Astir, that means a star in one sense. Astir is a star. Ethiopically, she's known as Astir, like Asterix, Astir, right? So here we have a Sister Esther in a tune called Soldiers. And it's a gospel reggae tune right here we'd like to share just to keep it the vibe.
Lord and a conqueror, I am victorious. I have overcome. I am a winner. Lord and a conqueror, I am victorious. I have overcome. Na 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 na. Soldiers, let's go, yeah. Baby, run up, run down, run up, run down. Grow up, baby, soldier, move. Gotta get up, wait up, get up. Don't you know now that the seas are fight? So build up your muscles, gotta be stronger. Don't get soldiers speaking tongues, cause we got no time, no time, no time. So preach the gospel everywhere you go. So wake up the battle, wake up and preach the word. So wake up the battle, reach out with rhapsody, yeah. I am a winner, more than a conqueror. I am victorious, I have overcome. I am a winner, more than a conqueror. I am victorious, I have overcome. Soldier, move. As a soldier of Christ, you gotta endure. So put on the armor of God. Let us go. We're reaching to people. Heads up. You gotta stand up, so chest out, face up, cause we are reaching to people. Heads up. Now we are touch the sick, heal them, make them walk up, preach the word like there's tomorrow, not day. Spirit in motion, never stop, never stumble. Now it has set the pace. I am a winner, more than a conqueror. I am victorious, I have overcome. victorious. I have overcome. Yeah. You know Jesus coming soon. You gotta get ready. Let me hear you sing. I will fight to the end. I will do my own best. I will run to the end because I can do all things. I will fight to the end. I will do my own best. I will run to the end because I can do all things. I will fight to the end. I will do my best. I will go to the end because I can do all things. I will fight to the end. Do my best. I will go to the end because I can do all things through Christ.
Yes, 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 yes. Esther right there with Soldiers, a gospel reggae tune right there. Let's get into some of the basic of what does the name Esther. Now, we already made the connection with Esther, right? Esther as we have it, and Easter is connected, etymology with the word sound, and Ishtar. Now, that was not her name. Her name was Hadassah. So I think we need to go to Hadassah first, right? Even though the book is named Esther, we find in the book that her Hebrew name is Hadassah, right? So some traditions, Judaically, Hebraically, here and there, for Purim involves a kind of little Halloween something like dressing up in masks because of one of the aspects of the narrative. You know, some of the practical, we can say the practical applications, you know, of this interesting spirituality in a book, right? A Judaic Hebraic book that does not have overtly, let me point this out, overtly, somewhat similar to Song of Songs, overtly the Hashem, the Yahweh name is not there. Right, but you can see he's moving in his people. His people have faith. His people are one with his people. In other words, they come together in that unity. Right, I have said ye are. Yes, I, Rastafari. So we have Hadassah, right? Hadassah in the Hebrew, Hadassah and Hadassah. Hadassah and Hadassah. Now in English, they're often written similarly. So that can be a little bit confusing, but let's first touch on the Hadassah. As we say, the Berit Hadassah. Berit is a covenant, and Hadassah means to be new or to make new or to renew. So Hadassah, right, is from the Hebrews to make anew. But in the Hebrew sense, new can be, and I use this example, like if you have a tire, like a tire on a car, and the tire gets flat and you go get it fixed and it gets repaired. The same tire, but there was a hole in it and they patched it up, right? That tire would have been like Hadassah. It was made new. So a sense of Hadassah, to be new, to make anew, right, also means to repair. Right, also means to repair. So now think about the sense. We say the old covenant and then say the new covenant, but we look at it Hebraically from the Hebrew sense, right? Making sense, the interpretation and the context in the Hebrew, it is a renewed, as we say, the renewed covenant, right? Or even a repairing, right, of that breach, for example, Yisrael Yasharala. But Hadassah, new, to make anew, to repair, to restore, right? To restore and to renew. Now, Hadassah was a city in the lowland of Yehuda, of Judah, praise, celebrated. That's what Judah means. Yehuda means praise, celebrated, right? A city in the lowland of Yehuda, praise, celebrate, mentioned as between Zenan and Migdal Gad in Yehoshua, chapter 15, verse 37. That's just the 5 cycle, the physical, we could say the exoteric, so to speak. Now here is the esoteric. That's the first of the two truths, right? Metaphysically speaking, Kidasha is a group of thoughts. So in the scripture, when we interpret, make sense of the script in the second of the two truths, cities, right, are likened to groups of thoughts. A group of a thought is a city, a consciousness. So it doesn't mean that we talk about Jerusalem as a city, but we as the people are true Yerushalayim, that consciousness, a group of thoughts, a city, in the subconscious mind. Why the subconscious mind? Because Kidasha was a city in the lowland of Yehuda, according to the outer type, the natural type, the first of the two truths. Now, in the inner, the spiritual, the higher sense of the outer sense is a group of thoughts in the subconscious mind, representing the lowland of Yehuda, that is established in a power, one may say an energy. They sometimes define energy as the ability to do work. I think that's a good operative, practical sense. But it's established in a power that works. A power that what? A power that works, not a power that poses. No, a power that works for perpetual use. A power that works for perpetual, on and on and on, or renewing one's youth. As it says, to renew I youth, you know, even as we get older as the eagles. Because note this, an eagle, right, as Yahuwah likening his deliverance of Yisrael from the Tawi, from the two lands, brought you out on the wings of the eagle, right? And we know that even Horus and all of that is also the same typology, right? But the perpetual youth, an eagle in captivity can potentially, and many have lived for a long time. Can you imagine how long an eagle lives? Because something about the eagle, as it gets older, is somehow able to renew its youth. That's why even in the song, renewing our youth like the eagles. So when we were speaking about Hadasha, the Hebrew word, sound, and power that represents new and making new and renewing and repairing and restoring and renewing, right? This is a group of thoughts, aggregation of thoughts, which is a city in the outer type, in the subconscious mind, which is the lowland of Yehuda, right? The lowland of praise, right? Of celebration, that is established in a power that works for perpetual youth. Thus, the meaning of Hadasha, new, to make new, to restore, and to renew in the individual. So in each of I, in the indivisible dual, the individual. We have in 2 Corinthians 5:17 this word sound. If any man is in Moshiach, Messiah, which is to say the anointed, if any man is in the anointed, in the anointing, if any man is in Messiah, Moshiach, Christos Christ, the anointed, he is a new creature, a new creation, to say a new creature. The old things, the old things are passed away. Behold, they are become Hadasha. Have become what? Hadasha, new, but in the Hebrew sense, they've been made anew, they've been repaired, they've been restored, they've been renewed. So this group of thoughts, or a state of consciousness, is closely associated with abundant substance. Substance, what is substance? Substance is two words. Sub, which means under or below. Stance is exactly as it sounds, a stand. Substance, right? Vitality, power, clearness of vision. And also the eagles, they renew their youth. They can live a long time, you know, perpetually, you know, a long time outside of any harm from men or people or smog or pollution, you know. So we have this Zenan. Zenan, rich in flocks. In the Hebrew, Zenan meaning rich in flocks. And Migdal, because where was Hadasha as a city? It was located between a place known as Zenan and Migdal Gad, Migdal God, right? Zenan and Migdal God. Zenan means rich in flowers, and Migdal God means Tower of God. Tower. When I say God, it sounds like God, but that's the Hebrew way of saying it. God. Gad that's that Western Gentile pronunciation. The Tower of God, right? God, right? Referring to the power, right? The faculty in man, and also meaning. It has the meaning of a seer, right? A seer, God, right? Now, God literally in the Hebrew is like a troop. And remember when the mama named him? She said, behold, a troop cometh, right? And she called his name God, right? Now that's Hadasha, which if you look at it in English, it's similar to Hadassah. So some of us, and I say us, in our studies had to make this distinction, right, between the two, right? Discernment. Therefore, understanding is discernment, actually. Ones who have good understanding can discern between two things that are similar, but also know how they're not the same. So Hadasha, to be new, and Hadassah. Now, Hadassah is Esther's, is Ishtar's, Aster's. It's her Hebrew name. Hadassah. Hadassah in the Hebrew means leaping, springing up, joy, a sense of gladness, but as a name of something, it's the name of the myrtle tree. But the sense of the root word can also mean leaping, springing up, like joy and gladness. Like you're so happy and joyful that you leap, you spring up. And as an object, we have the myrtle tree. So Esther's, Aster's, Ishtar's, our Hebrew Ishtar, her Hebrew name is Hadassah. And we have this in Esther chapter 2, verse 7. Now, metaphysically, that's the 5 cycle. Now, here's the higher, right? The metaphysical, right? But there will be no metaphysical if you don't have a physical. A lot of people want to get all metaphysical, but they don't even have the basic 5 cycle. First, we got to master, from the earthly to the heavenly type, from the outer to the inner type. So here we have metaphysically the myrtle as the myrtle tree is a lovely evergreen. Emphasis on evergreen. It's a lovely evergreen shrub or moderate. Note this, it's a moderate sized tree, not a big sized tree and not a small tree, but it's a moderate sized tree having white flowers. Both leaves and flowers, both the leaves and the flowers give out a very pleasant odor. Among the ancient Grackoi, right, in the times when the white people did like what they did in America and in Australia, drive off the native people before they were Ionians. They were, melanated people, the Ionians. So among the ancient Greeks, the myrtle tree was sacred to Venus, right, to Venus in their understanding of heavens and earth as the symbol of youth and beauty, beauty, right? It was used extensively at festivals, this myrtle, the myrtle flower and, shrub and tree. It is symbolical of life principle, ever vital, and here's the key, renewing. Right? So see the connection of Hadassah and Hadasha, right? Ever doing what? Ever renewing. So Hadassah, the Hebrew, the Yehudi, the Judean name of Esther, Hester, Aster, Ishtar, right, represents the joy, youthfulness, activity, and beauty of the soul, the nefesh. Now, what's interesting here is that in the Hebrew and Afro-Semitic languages, the soul is feminine. Just to take note of that, the beauty of the nefesh, ha-nefesh, establish the beauty of the soul that is established in a consciousness of the abidingness, the tabernacle, the dwelling, and the potency, the effectiveness of divine life, divine living it out, and love. Love the life you live and live the life you love, yes? So that right there is Hadasha, right, and Hadassah. So here, just to be full right here, all right, just sharing this for your meditation, meditation, and hopefully reasonments, right, with oneself and with one's brother and sister and others. Come, make a reason. Let's look at Esther, right? Esther. So here we have Esther, Esther, right? Now, Esther is the Hebrew, or Hester. We might say sometimes Hester, right? In the Ethiopic, they say Astir, right? And in other translations, we have Ishtar, right? But Esther, Hebrew from Persian, means star. So in the Ethiopic, we have Astir, right? Astir, right? The Asir, Ashtar, you know, you can see the connection, you know, even in other similar names as well. And this is a name that Hadassah chose, and, you know, this is the name that she chose. So just understand that they had their Hebrew names, right? But they had adopted these other names. So this is the sense, as we mentioned a little earlier, of one of the traditional observations of wearing masks, almost like, is Purim the Hebrew or the Jewish Halloween? We just put that question out there, all right? And why do we say that? But Esther means star, Astir, like an asterisk, Astir, right? The planet Venus, all right? The planet that is called or referred to as Venus, right? The happiness, right? And good fortune or good fortuna, good fortune, right? To say good luck, right? Because remember, luck, Luca is light, Lucifer. They say Lucifer, but Luca. Now, I'm connecting these words. Yeah, I have to mention Lucifer there just to break down what Luke basically means. Lux means light, right? So when it says good fortune or good luck, literally, right, would mean good light, like Mazel Tov, right? Mazel, the star constellation, right? A good constellation, as being a good season, a good time, right? And we know that ones and ones looked at the heavens in order to tell time. Now, some may have went into worship and other things. That's a different thing. But, you know, everybody drinks water. Some might add something to the water. Some might drink it straight, you know what I mean? Boil it or whatever. But it's the basics. So Esther was a beautiful Israelitish woman, right, who became the queen of King Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus, which in another form of translation would be Xerxes with an X. Ahasuerus, Xerxes, Ahasuerus. It's a whole linguistic thing, right, of Persia. Esther chapter 2, verse 7 to Esther chapter 9, verse 32, where we have the beautiful Israelitish woman who became the queen of King Ahasuerus or Xerxes of Persia. You know, this is in a lot of movies, Xerxes, like even that 300, but they be wilding in their movies and everything. But anyway, Esther, with her cousin Mordecai. So Mordecai, who was like, it was a cousin, but Mordecai also was like a kind of a big brother, father type figure, Mordecai, right? And Mordecai is related to Marduk. So notice that some of the names that they even adopted, right, even in foreign, were the names of some of these ones that people might say were the gods, Mordecai, Marduk, right? She, with her cousin Mordecai, was instrumental in saving the lives of the Judean, the Judahite, the Jewish people, even we, the Black Jewish people in Persia. That's the basic 5 cycle, the basic summary. Metaphysically speaking, what does Esther not just mean, but how can the science, the Hebrew science, be applied? Esther, the dissolving power of spiritual love. Esther, bringing out Esther as the dissolving power, the power of dissolve. Spiritual love has the power to dissolve. In other words, this to dissolve something. You know, this is an antidote, the antidote for a dictatorial will, because Xerxes, especially in the beginning of the book, he puts away one queen because he has guests that come over and he want to show off his trophy wife, and for whatever reason she didn't want to come out, or she didn't come out, and immediately he cut her off and he was looking for another queen. And this is where Esther comes into the picture, and Esther represents the dissolving power of spiritual, iritical love. This is the antidote, right? Like we say, good over evil. This is the antidote for a dictatorial will. Queen Esther had all her relatives, all her relations, all her peeps, them, all fellow Yehudim, you know, whether they were from the tribe of Benjamin as she was, or tribe of Judah, but Judah and Benjamin and some of Levi, they was rolling together in Persia at that time. So Queen Esther had all of her relatives, the Yehudim, the Judeans, the Judahites, called today Jews, which represent the spiritual thoughts, join her in a fast. So before she even really fully committed to certain actions, she asked her people to fast with us. Come on, we all gotta pray together. The family that pray, fast, and pray. Howbeit this kind goeth not out. Robbeinu, Einai Rabbi, the rabbi of rabbis, our black Lord and Savior Yeshua HaMashiach says, howbeit this kind goeth not out except by what? Prayer and fasting. So Queen Esther had all of her relatives, the Yehudim, the Judahites, the spiritual thoughts, join her in a fast. This means that we must deny. So bringing out the sense of what a fast really is in its metaphysical, right, application. We must deny. Fasting is to say denying all selfish desires out of our love before we use it. Again, denying all selfish desires out of our love faculty, our love power, before we use it in softening the imperious will, that dictatorial will that Xerxes. Remember, Xerxes in the beginning of it, he's a big king of Persia. He's a big man there. He has guests, foreign dignitaries, and they might be there with their women, their wives, and he's like, oh, hold on for a moment. Call Vashti, you know, call to come out. It was like a trophy wife type of situation, and she didn't come out, and he cut her off, and he immediately told everyone, I'm looking for, you know, a new wife. And this is where Esther, you know, comes into view right here. When this consciousness of love stands in the inner court of our being, we cannot help acceding, like submitting to its demands. It's interesting because she's wondering, like, sometimes, like, oh man, I don't know if I should just go just like that and just ask him, just say this right here. Mordecai is saying it's all right, but when she finally does, even his agreeing, acceding. You know, they say power does not give up anything without a demand, right? But her demand was that consciousness of iritical, spiritual, higher love, right? Unselfish love is fearless because she knew, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to speak to this king. You know how he get down. You know what I mean? He might just never know what he could have done, right? When she made her request and made it known, right? But this was the aspect of her unselfish love. She was in a position to do something and she did it. So that unselfish love is fearless. She was fearless, even like in another sense of it, the Harriet Tubman, Queen Esther. She was fearless because of its and her forgetfulness of self. So even by calling her fellow relatives to fast with her, You know what I mean? It's almost like in the old black church. The two powerful forces among black people here in these Americas and Caribbean was the black woman and the black church. Interesting. So here we have this kind of come together. She called the people, right, to congregate, come together. Let's all be on this spiritual accord. You know what I mean? You know, and with them fasting with her, they're with me, right? So I can be selfless. I could forget myself and go for it. The willpower is important. The willpower, it divides its dominion. The willpower, and this is just the principles in us, depends on how we exercise it, what results we get. But the will, in principle, divides its dominion with love. Right? In the Hebrew metaphysics, the will divides its dominion, what the will runs, what the will rules over. It divides that with love when approached in the right attitude. When approached in the what? In the right attitude. Right? So it says, not what you say, right? They say, but it's how you say it, right? When approached in the right attitude, which is by touching the highest point of the understanding, the highest point of the comprehension, the understanding. And you know what that was in the narrative of Esther? That was the top of the golden scepter, touching the top of the golden scepter, right? Understanding, on Hebrew, the word for understanding is bina. Now, what's interesting in the Hebrew is that wisdom and bina are two faculties that are feminine. Chokmah, wisdom, and bina. They're like sisters. In Shlomo's Proverbs, he says, call them sistren, you know, like hold them, you know, for they are life. Right? So bina. Now, bina comes from the Hebrew, two Hebrew roots, words can be referred to. One is bana. Bana means to build in Hebrew. Bana, right? Where we get the term for a son, a bane, and even for a daughter, a benot, right? The builder of the family name, the bane, right? From bana. Then we have ben, right? In form and bane, but there's the other form of bane, bayin, a little more emphasis there. It means between. For example, for Passover, it says that the Passover should occur between the evenings. What time? Passover between the evenings. Interesting. Between the evenings, right? So the idea of understanding from the Hebrew, coming from the bina root and the bana, right, and the bane, is discernment. So when you understand something, that's what it says, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. See, you can know something, right, but don't know how the something. That means you lack wisdom. Now you can know something and know how the something, but now when you put it into application, right, you get that understanding, that comprehension. You know, the difference between kind of like reading about something, you know, a place or something, and actually doing it. You know, and you can then look at the instruction and say, oh, okay, that's what they meant by it. But when you read the instruction, you didn't get it. But when you put it into action, it kind of clarified. You got that comprehension. So understanding of divine law, Torah, direction, instruction, is the one necessary thing. The one necessary thing. What is the one necessary thing? Understanding, comprehension. The ability to have good discernment of the divine direction, instruction, the law called Torah, is the one necessary thing in all permanent unions. When we know the truth, we are all one, and there is no separation, right, whatsoever. Now, it's kind of interesting that Esther, you know, Hadassah, she chose that particular name, right? Didn't she? She chose that particular name, you know, which is Ishtar, you know, and then the light that she gave, right, to her husband, the king, Xerxes Ahasuerus. You can see those elements of the narrative, you know, and this is why this little small book, right, is so important because of how it's read and how it's understood, and also how the understanding can be put into application. One more word right here. Can we touch on Hadasha, to be new, Hadassah, the myrtle tree, touched on Esther, right? And here for Purim, Chabarim, Purim. Now we have Pur, not P-O-O-R, but Pur, P-U-R, right? And Purim, right? One is the singular, Pur is a singular sense, and Purim is a double or more than, right? But usually the eem brings out a double sense, like dice. Usually when people roll dice, usually it's one dice. No, it's usually two, right? So this is Hebrew from the Persian. So the word pur is actually a Persian, right? A Persian word. And in Persia, it means a part. Pur, a part, or purim, parts. Purim, portion, a lot, like a die, to say like a dice in a sense, or an oracle. So pur, at the root of purim, it refers to the casting of lots and consulting of astrologers by Haman, the Agagite, the Yehudi, the Judeans' enemy, against the Yehudi, the Judeans, to destroy them in Esther chapter 3, verse 7, and Esther chapter 9, verse 24. So let's put this into context here. So Pur and Purim refers to the casting of lots. The lots were like dice, like what we call dice today, although they might have had different, ways of numbering the sides of the dice. Basically, that's the sense. Like, okay, if I get this, then I'll do that. Roll the dice, boom, see what it is. So this was used by Haman, who's a descendant of Amalek, who's a descendant of Esau, right? In consulting with astrologers about the right time to exterminate the Yehudi, the black Jews of Persia, right? So Purim is the name of the Yehudi, the Judean festival that instituted by the Judeans, the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, portions of the tribe of Levi that were in Persia after that return and ting, right? In remembrance of their deliverance from the destructive devices of the wicked, the ratchet Haman or Haman. Purim is the plural of pur, right? So the I am in the English, that doubles it in the Hebrew sense, right? At least two or more sense. Esther chapter 9, verses 26 to 28, we have Purim right here. Now, metaphysically right here, because we like to share some of the actual reading, right, of those chapters by Alexander Scorby, coming forward right here. Metaphysically, what does pur, portion, part, a lot, to say like a lot, like dice, or an oracle? An oracle metaphysically mean pur, P-U-R, Purim, refers to superstitious belief in and fear of fate. So the whole idea of pur and Purim, right, in Haman's, what it is like, Haman was using this like a dagger and a handle. And what Esther was able to do on behalf of her people was basically, we were at the edge of the blade and she got a handle of the matter. So now I'm bringing out the metaphysics of, well, why do we call this, and this is called Purim? Well, pur at the root, lot, dice, refers to the superstitious belief in and a fear of fate or luck and astrological or psychic influences as having power for evil in one's life. In other words, if Haman was a real so-called G, right? I mean, he could just gone for it, right? Let's just go and kill them off. But he was one that he had to kind of like consult, and that means he had a fear, like if somebody says, yeah, I'm gonna kill you. Come on with it, right? I'm in the street, and they say, hold on for a moment. I gotta consult my astrologer. You know. But this is what the situation was, right? The superstitious belief in and a fear of fate, a fear of luck. Is this my lucky day? Astrological and psychic influences. Is this a good time in the heavens to do something down here on earth, as having power for evil in one's life? All right. If you say every day is a good day and you walk in a good way, then hopefully good will come thy way. Such error ideas and fears and phobias, they belong to the adverse consciousness. Now, when we say adverse consciousness, to put this in our Hebraic linguistic, the satanic, the adversarial mind, the adverse, the satanic, the satanic consciousness, the adverse, the consciousness of the opposition consciousness. And if we indulge, and if people indulge in, right, and if it's indulging, these are destructive. They are deconstructive to one's true spiritual upbuilding and unfoldment. So Purim here would symbolize the great joy and the new hold, the new grasp on spiritual life and liberty and substance, that the overcomer, to speak about the Yehudi, the Judahites, even we as Black people, all the times that Hamans have sought, even today, have sought to exterminate, to kill the seed before it grows. The overcomer, we as the overcomer should have great joy when this is realized, we overcome them, right? So Purim brings out the great joy and the new hold on spiritual liberty, right, and substance, right, that the overcomer realizes by means of his deliverance from the superstitious, right, the superstitious fears that Pur and Purim represented. So in the sense of how some Yehudi was celebrated, it's almost like a mockery. It's almost like a mockery of that, by that power of faith, but in the people's action and in ones, especially the Black Jewish queen, her doing her part and the people being with her, giving her that backative, And yes, people might think, oh, we was waiting for God to come from the sky. No. You know what I mean? So both has the spiritual aspects of it, the faith of the people in one another, in their community, in their leaders, be it a queen, a sister, a daughter, or to mind them, and in that victory, that overcoming. And also there's the more, the revolutionary aspect, the killing, the cramping, and destroying of those who sought to destroy Jah people. Yes, so this is a good sense of spiritual deuces, that rolling of the dice. Yes, Rastafari, and that overcoming.
Overcoming, huh? Yeah, man. Right at here. No. The genius again. We shall overcome. Shall overcome. Must overcome. We must overcome. So the apprentices are overcome. We pray. So my God, they hurt that time. From my friend that said them love me when me know them lie. Me pray for the godly youth for time me know them cry. Babylon a shoot the long and them a tell me a lie. Me pray. Cause rice and flour to buy. Can't depend on cassava that hard to fry. Now living on the whole day that hard to try. Me ask my mama is bacon that hard to buy. So we shall overcome. Shall overcome, must overcome. We must overcome. Say get the youth some money overgone. Me tired of this, the damn frustration. Tired of Babylon and them damn molestation. Them know me occupation. and no lock off the sound and lock me no station. With music a full nation. All it alone people use but through them tribulation. Me a talk with the nation. Me no want no demonstration. No, we shall overcome. Shall overcome, must overcome. We must overcome. That will be done, I know. Me tired of it every day. Man of them, tired of the innocent. Blood a shed, tired of it. Jamaica run red. People can't sleep in them bed. Me tired of it. Poverty. We need solidarity. Me a talk to the majority. You hear me? You hear me clearly? Clearly. We must overcome. Jehovah come, must overcome. We must overcome. Yeah. No, no, yeah. Overcome, money overcome, y'all overcome. We shall overcome.
Every goal is side, you see. Because of a piece of joint spent to common sense. To all some Southside jungle firehouse. South is garden, Spangler.
Overcome, Spanish stone.
Plans are one order, you know?
Clans and one another. Mountain View, Margaret Gully, every gully, Portland, St. Ann, St. Mary, the whole Jamaica, Jamaican. We
Clans in one order. That's what we have right here with Esther, with the Hebrew queen, the black Hebrew queen, Esther, the Yehudi queen right here. Favorite chapters 8 and 9. Go check it out. Yes, when the vengeance was ordered and when the vengeance was executed. Sometimes you got to make examples. But here, this example, lest it be forgotten. Even Harriet Tubman and the other queens as well, and all the freedom fighters of I&I people, and by extension of other peoples fighting for their rightful truth and rights. But right here, brothers and sisters, check out, especially the sisters, check this out. Also, the Judith, one of the apocryphal books, Yodit, which when you start to read some of the real Hebrew apocryphal books, you'll see that, hey, we had no problem when the queens and our daughters and sisters. It's unlike how the white man and counterfeit Christianity has made people believe. But we're going to get into these chapters right here coming up. But first, today's daily psalm right here, word sound right here. Psalm 85 on the midnight rhythm right here. English and again, Shalom Chavarrim. Here we have today's daily psalm. We have Psalm.
Psalm 85. Lord, thou hast been favorable unto thy land. Thou hast brought back the captivity of Jacob. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Thou hast covered all their sins. Selah. Thou hast taken away all thy wrath. Thou hast turned thyself from the fierceness of thine anger. Turn us, O God of our salvation, and cause thine anger toward us to cease. Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Wilt thou draw out thine anger to all generations? Wilt thou not revive us again, that thy people may rejoice in thee? Show us thy mercy, O Lord, and grant us thy salvation. I will hear what God the Lord will speak, for he will speak peace unto his people and to his saints. But let them not turn again to folly. Surely his salvation is nigh them that fear him, that glory may dwell in our land. Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase. Righteousness shall go before him, and shall set us in the way of his steps. Righteousness shall go before him, 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 and shall set us in the way of his steps. Righteousness shall go before him, shall go before him, set us in the way, 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 set
מזמור פ"ה, למנצח לבני קורח מזמור. רצית אדוני ארצך, שבת שביט יעקב. נשאת עוון עמך, כיסית כל חטאתם סלע. אספת כל עברתך, השיבות מחרון אפיך. שובנו אלוהי ישענו, והפר כעסך עמנו. הלעולם תאנף בנו, תמשוך אפיך לדור ודור. הלא אתה תשוב תחיינו, ועמך ישמחו בה. הראינו אדוני חסדך, וישעך תיתן לנו. אשמעה מה ידבר האל אדוני, כי ידבר שלום אל עמו ואל חסידיו, ואל ישובו לחסלה. אך קרוב ליראיו ישעו, לשכון כבוד בארצנו. חסד ואמת נפגשו, צדק ושלום נשקו. אמת מארץ תצמח, וצדק משמיים נשקף. גם אדוני ייתן הטוב, וארצנו תיתן יבולה. צדק לפניו יהלך, וישם לדרך פעמיו, 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 פעמיו.
Oh, let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice. Let God. Let God. Let God. Let God.
Just Rastafari. Just Rastafari. Just Rastafari.
Purim Sameach, Sameach, Purim, Shpacha, Shalom. Happy Purim family. Right here. There's an intro right here. The book of Esther. The book of Hester, Asir, Ishtar, the book of Esther. The significance of the book of Esther is that it testifies to the secret watch care of Jehovah over dispersed Yisrael, over dispersed Yasharallah, over dispersed Beta Israel. The name of Hashem, the name of God, does not occur once. The Hebrew name of God does not occur once, but in no other book of the Hebrew Bible is his providence, Jehovah Jireh, Yahweh Yireh, Jehovah Iri, his providing more conspicuous. A mere remnant return to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem. Once again, now point this to even the latter days in time, if the land grant, right, of the Ethiopian World Federation Corporate. Note this here of job people, a mere remnant returned to Jerusalem. The mass of the nation preferred the easy and lucrative life under the Persian rule. So we can look at this even with I, the royal order of the Ethiopian Hebrews, that some, a remnant, went to, as we would say, repatriate, to return to the land. But the mass of the nation, the dispersed people, preferred by comparison, the easy and lucrative life under the Persian rule then, right? But Elohim, Elohim did not forsake them. But even though, right, Jehovah did not forsake them, and Jehovah does not forsake I and I, even here in these foreign lands, so to speak. What he here does for Yehuda, for Judah, he is surely doing for all the covenanted people, all the covenant people. So this is like an example what he did for Yehuda. Remember, Yehuda, Judah, even with the remnant returning, they were the only ones that had returned. The 10 tribes, you know, we could forget about it before that time, you know, until even these later times, you know. But it was Yehuda, it was Judah, along with the tribes of like Benjamin. So we note that there that Esther or Hadassah and her cousin Mordecai were of the tribe of Benjamin, but they are Yehudi, they are Judeans. All right, let's go on. So the mass of the nation preferred the easy and lucrative life under Persian rule. You know, like remember that Pato Bantan song he had, Nuff Dread, I think it's called Nuff Dread. He said some dread said like, you know, why should they go to Africa, you know, where they could like, you know, drive a crisp car and be, you know, like, and be big in like Babylon, you know what I mean? Big about you, like abroad and everything. It's an interesting kind of a contrast right there. But even so, Jah does not forsake his people, right? What he does for Judah, for Yehuda, he is surely doing for all the covenant people, right? Even I and I here in this North Country, so-called Black America, we have done for even the Black people here, we can see he does for all of the diaspora everywhere. You know, so even gather, even here in this North Country for like reasons as we have in the book of Esther. Now, the book here is in 7 parts, the book of Esther. The first part is the story of Vashti, or as it's translated here, Vashti, right? That was the former queen of Xerxes in chapter 1, verses 1 to 22. The second part is Esther. Esther is made queen in Esther chapter 2, verses 1 to 23. The third part is the conspiracy of Haman, right? Of Haman, right? In chapter 3, verses 1 to 15. The fourth part is the courage of Esther brings deliverance in chapter 4, verse 1 to chapter 7, verse 10. Then we have the fifth part. The fifth part is the vengeance. Is the vengeance, right? In chapter 8, right, verses 1 to chapter 8, verses 1 to chapter 9, verse 19. And then we have the sixth part, the 7 parts of the book of Esther, is where we have the Feast of Purim. And this comes forward in chapter 9, verses 20 to verse 32. And then the 7th part is like the epilogue, like an epilogue. And it's chapter 10, verses 1 to 3. So here on the eve right here, entering that time, you know, and also Esther is significant because it's one of the, I think, 60 to 80 something places, depends on the version of the Bible you're reading, where we have Ethiopia or Cush mentioned. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus who ruled as king from India, from Hindia, even to Ethiopia, to Tobia, over 120 provinces. This is how it begins off right here. Ethiopia mentioned right at the top. So here, Shema Yisrael, Purim Sameach, happy Purim.
Well, let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice before God.
Yes! Rastafari! Yes! Rastafari! Yes! Rastafari!
The Holy Bible, the King James Version. Read by Alexander Scorby. The Book of Esther, Chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 127 provinces, that in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom, and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple, to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment, and the next unto him was Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes, and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes which have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes. And the king did according to the word of Memucan, for he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. Chapter 2. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hegi the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace to the custody of Hegi, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house to the custody of Hegi, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him. And he speedily gave her her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Now, when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months according to the manner of the women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women, then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Sheashgaz the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Hegai the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the provinces, and gave gifts according to the state of the king. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. Chapter 3. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman, to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the 1st month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand, and gave it unto Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, The silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the 1st month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by posts into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. and to take the spoil of them for a prey. A copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The posts went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink. But the city Shushan was perplexed. Chapter 4. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate. For none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him. But he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatach went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews, to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. And Hatach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again Esther spake unto Hatach, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants, and all the people of the king's provinces, do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his, to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told Mordecai Esther's word. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, Think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall there enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way, and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, that Esther put on her royal apparel, and stood in the inner court of the king's house over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near, and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends, and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said moreover, Yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh his wife, and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. Chapter 6. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, What honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, There is nothing done for him. And the king said, Who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servants said unto him, Behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, Let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, To whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? And Haman answered the king, For the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Then the king said to Haman, Make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate. But Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. Chapter 7. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. And the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, Behold also, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. Chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month Siban, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by posts, on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey, upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. A copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment. And the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. And Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Parmashta, and Arisai, and Aridai, and Bajezatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. On that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, The Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee? Or what is thy request further, and it shall be done? Then said Esther, If it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey, on the 13th day of the month Adar. And on the 14th day of the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote these things, and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them. Because Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them, and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device which he devised against the Jews should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore were all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed, the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. Chapter 10. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto king Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. The end of the book of Esther.
Well, let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice before God.
If tomorrow is Judgment Day,
Original Justice Man, champion song.
when I'm standing on the front line, when the Lord asks me what I give it a sound, I would say, Jaja, you know I kill them for you. I kill them for you. I kill them for you.
Well, let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice before God.
Yes! Rastafari! Yes! Rastafari! Yes! Rastafari!
Purim Sameach, yes, I praise be to the Black Queen. Here, Fredlocks, I got joy.
I've got a joy deep within my heart. I've got a joy deep within my heart. 'Cause I've got joy deep within my heart. 'Cause I've got joy deep within my heart. That is my guide, even unto death. So I don't have no regret. So the road is rocky, stony, and rough. To go to Mount Zion,
joy deep within my heart. Cause of Jah, oh Jah, deep within my heart. Cause of Jah, oh Jah, deep within my heart. So listen, wicked people, I don't fear no foe. I'm standing up now for all that I know. This is my life, I live how I choose. With Jah on my side, oh, can I lose? I've got a joy deep within my heart. I've got a joy deep within my heart. Cause I've got Jah, oh Jah, deep within my heart. Cause I've got Jah, oh Jah, deep within my heart. I don't fear no foe. I'm standing up now for all that I know. This is my life, I live how I choose. With Jah on my side, oh, can I lose? I've got a joy deep within my heart. I've got a joy deep within my heart. Cause I've got Jah, oh Jah, deep within my heart. Cause I've got Jah, oh Jah, deep within my heart. I've got a joy. I've got a joy, a sweet joy.
Yes. A little bit more on Purim as we go into the day. You know, here's the eve beginning of this remembrance, time of remembrance. We have today's daily psalm, a prayer. It's a prayer right here for salam, for shalom, Psalm 85.
Psalm 85. Lord, thou hast been favorable unto thy land. Thou hast brought back the captivity of Jacob. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Thou hast covered all their sin. Selah. Thou hast taken away all thy wrath. Thou hast turned thyself from the fierceness of thine anger. Turn us, O God of our salvation, and cause thine anger toward us to cease. Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Wilt thou draw out thine anger to all generations? Wilt thou not revive us again, that thy people may rejoice in thee? Show us thy mercy, O Lord, and grant us thy salvation. I will hear what God the Lord will speak, for he will speak peace unto his people and to his saints. But let them not turn again to folly. Surely his salvation is nigh them that fear him, that glory may dwell in our land. Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase. Righteousness shall go before him, and shall set us in the way of his steps. Righteousness shall go before him, 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 and shall set us in the way of his steps. Righteousness shall go before him, shall go before him, set us in the way, 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 set us in the way. Highly, 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 Selassie.
In Ethiopian life, the imperial ruler is likened in splendor to the sun, splendor to the sun, splendor to the sun, in exalted power to the lion, to the lion, to to the lion, in his divine being to the kings of Israel, divine being to the kings of Israel, to the kings of Israel, to the kings of Israel, and at times to God, and at times to God, and at times to God himself.
Well, let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice before God. Before God. Before God.
Before Solomon Machieda, before Moses before ya, Vashti did come before Esther, Jacob from Ethiopia.
And here, Midrash, study on today's Psalm, Mizmor Fei Hey, Mizmor Peh Hey, Mizmor Fei Hey, Psalm 85, Psalm LXXXV, Mizmor Fei Hey, Mizmor Peh Hey, Mizmor Fei Hey. For the leader, a psalm of the sons of Korah. Lord, thou hast been favorable to thy land. Thou, the eye hast turned the captivity of Jacob. La menatzeach livnei korach mizmor. Ratzitai Yehovah artzeka. Shavta shavuta Yaakov. For the leader, la menatzeach. For the leader, the chief musician, the overcomer, la menatzeach. La menatzeach. For the leader, a psalm of the sons of Korah, Livnei Korach, of the sons of Korah, Livnei Korach, Mizmor, a chant, a psalm, Isis, Lamnatzeach, Livnei Korach, Mizmor. Ratzita, Yahuwah Arzeka, Ratzitai, Yahuwah Arzeka. Yahuwah Jehovah, O he who be, thou, the I male, has been favorable. Ratzita, favorable, the I, Ratzita, Yahuwah, Arzeka, to the I land. Shavta, Shavut, Yaakov. Thou hast turned, Shavta, Shavut. Thou hast turned the turning. Thou hast turned the captivity. Shavta, Shavut. Shavta, Shavut, Yaakov. The eye has turned the captivity of Yaakov, of Jacob. Zehu, Shamar, Hakatu. These words are to be considered in the light of the verse. Zehu, Shamar, Hakatu, found in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 12, that reads, a land that the Lord thy God heareth thee. The eyes of the Lord thy God are always upon it. Eretz asher Yahweh Eloheka doesha otaha tamida ainei Yahweh Eloheka baha. A land that he who be thy Elohim. Eretz asher Yahweh Eloheka careth for. Doresh otaha, careth for her. Tamid Ainai Yahuwah Eloheka Baha. The Ainai Yahuwah, the eyes of we Eloheka, the I Elohim are always Tamid, Ainai Yahuwah Eloheka, up on it, on her, Baha, Eret Ashari Yahuwah Eloheka, Doresh Otaha, Tamid Ainai Yahuwah Eloheka Baha. That is Ha'el, the true God turns to it, turns to Ha, and turns again to it, turns again to Ha, and regards it, and regards Ha, and keeps his eyes upon Ha, until such time as its deeds, as her deeds and performance of the precepts concerning it that were enjoined upon Yisrael, the Sar of El, Yasharel, Yisrael, shall find favor with Hakadosh Baruch Hu, with the Holy One, the Sanctified One, the Set Apart One, the Isla One, Baruch Hu, blessed be He. When they bring forth the tithe and observe the years of release and of Jubilee, and observe all the other precepts that were enjoined concerning the land, in that hour, the land will make its deeds, her deeds, find favor with Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And here the Midrash note on Mizmor Fei, Psalm 85. Here the Midrash note connected here with what is said concerning the years of release, the Shemitah. That is release from debt, the years of release from debt and from plowing the soil. This means the sabbatical year. As scripture says, according to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 34, that reads, then shall the land make her Sabbath, Shabbat, find favor. Then shall the land make her Sabbath find favor. Here, Wayikra, Leviticus chapter 30, verse 34. Az tirzeh haaretz et shabbatoteha kola yemeya hashama ve'atema be'eretza oibekem az tishbata haaretza ve'tirzata et shabbatoteha. Then shall the land be paid her Sabbath, Shabtoteha, as long as it lieth desolate, and ye and y'all are in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest, and repay her Sabbath, her Shabtoteha. Az tirzeh haaretz et Shabtoteha. Then shall the land be paid her Sabbath. Az tirzeh haaretz et Shabtoteha. Then shall the land make her Sabbath find favor. Az tirzeh haaretz et Shabtoteha. And here Midrash note on Mizmor Pei, Mizmor Pei, Psalm 85. Apparently, instead of enjoy, enjoy, the commentator reads instead of enjoy. The commentator here in the Midrash reads the glyphs as that means to cause, to find favor. So instead of commentator reads it as cause to find favor. Az haaretz eta shabtoteha. Then shall the land make her Sabbath find favor. Hence, here, even in today's psalm, hence, thou hast been favorable. Thou, the eye, has been favorable to thy land. Ratzi Yahweh Arseka, O he who be who he be. Ratzita, thou hast been favorable. Arseka, to thy land. Ratzita Yahweh Arseka. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Hear today's psalm. Mizmor Hey. Psalm 85. Here Hebraically the Gamel, the third verse. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Nasata Eon Ameka. Nasata Eon Ameka. Nasata Evon Ameka. Forgiven, lifted up. Nasata, the eye male has lifted up. Nasata, Eon or Evon, modern Hebrew Evon. Nasata, Evon Ameka. Ancient pointing, Nasata, Eon Ameka. Thou hast forgiven, thou hast lifted up the iniquity, the Evon Ameka of the people. Can anything but the land wherein they dwell cause the iniquity of Amo Yisrael, of the people of Yisrael, to be forgiven? Since it is said, even in Isaiah chapter 33, verse 24, the people that dwell therein shall be forgiven their iniquity. Ha'am hayoshev baha nisu aon. The people that dwell therein shall be forgiven their iniquity. Ha'am hayoshev baha. The people ha'am hayoshev baha, that dwell baha, in ha. Nisu avon. The people that dwell therein shall be forgiven their iniquity. Ha'am hayoshev baha nisu avon. Behold the living. Behold the living. The living shall be forgiven. The dead too? Yes. Since scripture says, according to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 43, scripture says, its earth makes expiation for his people. Its earth makes expiation for his people. And here, Deuteronomy 32, here, the last part of verse 43, Wikiper Admato Amo, Wikiper Admato Ammo, and doth make expiation for the land of his people. One reading with kiper, and kiper expiation, kiper pardon, like atonement, kapar, kiper, with kiper, admato, adama, the land, admato, his land, amo, his people, with kiper, admato, amo. And here, Midrash notes, the Yehudi version also reads, and doth make expiation for the land of his people, the land of his people, but also may be read, its earth, admato, its earth, makes expiation with kippur, makes atonement with kippur for his people, amno, with kippur, admato, amno. We are to understand, to come to the understanding that what makes expiation, kippur, for Amo is its very earth, admato. Happy are they that dwell in the land of Yisrael. Happy are they that dwell in the Eretz Yisrael. Here, no land in the Brit Chadash sense also applies to the true consciousness, the consciousness of Yisrael, of the Sar of El, of the Prince of the Almighty, of Yasharel, of the upright of the Almighty, of Yisroel, the man who sees the true good, the true God, the true Almighty. So the land, New Covenant sense, consciousness, the true consciousness of the true spiritual thought. Happy are they that dwell in the Eretz Yisrael, the land, the consciousness of Yisrael. For neither when they are alive, nor when they are dead, is sin, is chet, or iniquity, avon, in them. Thus, like this scripture says, even in today's Psalm, Mizmor Fei, hey, Psalm 85, here in the Gimel, the Gamel, the third verse, Psalm 85, verse 3, Hebraically, thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people, thou hast pardoned all their sin forever, Nasata Eron Ameka Kasita Kola Hatatam Selah. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Nasata Eron Ameka. Thou hast pardoned Kasita. Thou hast covered Kasita. Thou hast pardoned Kasita. To cover Kasita Kol Chatatam Selah. Call all Chatatam, all their Chatat, their Chatiyat, their sin, their uckery, Chatatam Selah, forever. Nasata Eron Ameka Kasita Call Chatatam Selah. And here on Nasata, from Nasata to lift up, Nasata, either Martin pointing Nasata, but Angel pointing Nasata, Eron, Nasata, Eron, Ameka, Nasa, the I male Nasata has lifted up, Nasata has lifted up as though Evon or Eon, iniquity, twisted pervertedness, a crushing burden that's upon the people. He who ye be, has Nasa, has lifted the Eon, the Evon, of Ameka, of the eye of Amo Yisrael. Nasata Eon Ameka Kasita Kol Achadatam Selah, forever. And also it is written, even in Micah chapter 7, verse 18, who is a God like to thee, that pardoneth the iniquity, and passeth by the transgression of the remnant of his heritage? Mi el kamoka, no se aona we over ala pesha, lisharita nachlato, lo hechezi laad apo, kia chafeta chesed who is a God? Mi el, who? El, true good, true God, Almighty El. Mi, who? El, mi El, kamoka, like ka, moka, like to the eye, man. Mi El, kamoka, no se aon, no se, the pardoner, the lifter of aon, no se Aaron, we oder al pesha, and passeth by, passeth over, we oder al pesha, passeth all upon pesha, passeth over pesha. Iniquity passeth over transgression, pesha, rebellion, sense of rebellion, but transgression, passeth over transgression. We'ober al pesha, lisharita nachlato, for li she'erit, for the she'erit, for the remnant, nachlato, of his nachlato, of his heritage. Lish erita nachlato. Lo hechazika la'ada apo, kia chafeta chesed hu. He retaineth not his anger forever, because he delighteth in mercy. Lo hechazik, lo, not hechazik, not strong, not being like strong, like chazak yad, a strong hand. Hechazik, not strong, la'ad, forever, going on, la'ad, forever, apo, forever his anger. He retaineth, the sense here, he retaining not his anger forever. Lo hechazika la'ada apo, ki chafet, ki for chafet, for he delighteth chafet, chesed, mercy, loving kindness, who? He, because he delighteth, for delighting mercy, loving kindness, who? He, for he delighteth in mercy. Mi el kamoka, no se aona we ober al pesha, lisharita nachlata, lo hechazika la'adapo, kia chafeta chesed u. Thou hast taken away all thy wrath, thou the eye hast turned thyself from the fierceness of thine anger. Here today's Psalm 85, Hebraically the 4th verse that reads, thou hast taken away all thy wrath, thou the eye hast turned thyself from the fierceness of thine anger. Asafta kol evrateka, heshivota meyachron apeka. As Ezekiel said, Ezekiel said in Ezekiel chapter 5 verse 13, thus shall mine anger spend itself. Thus, like this, shall mine anger spend itself. Wikala api. Thus shall my anger api. Thus shall my anger spend itself. Wikala api. And as Hosea also said, I will heal their backsliding, for mine anger is turned away from him. In Hosea chapter 14, verse 5. I will heal their backsliding, for mine anger is turned away from him. Erpa mishubatam. Erpa mishubatam. Erpa mishubatam. I will heal their backsliding. Ohebe nedava. I will love them freely. Ohebe nedava. Loving them nedava. Ohebe nedava. Ohebe nedava. Ki shabapiyamimenu. For mine anger is turned away from him. Ki shab api mimenu from him. Ki for shab turn api my anger mimenu from him. Erpa mishubatam ohevim manedava. When the Bnei Korach, the sons of Korah, asked, how long wilt thou be angry with us? How long will the I be angry with I and I? Thou didst say, even in Jeremiah, Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 14, return, O backsliding children. Thou the I did say, even in Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 14, return, O backsliding children. Shavu vanim shovavim, or Shabu banim shobabim, return. Shubu banim shobabim, O backsliding children. Banim, sons, banim shobabim, backsliding. Shubu banim shobabim, return, O backsliding sons, O backsliding children. Shubu abanim shobabim. However, when the Bnei Yisrael, when the sons of Yisrael said to thee, return thou first, return the I first, return thou first, as is said even in Psalm 90, Hebraically the 13th verse, return, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, how long? Shuvah Adonai, Admatai, Shuvah Yahuwah, Admatai, return, O Jehovah, O He who be, Shuvah Yahuwah, Admatai, how long? Ad, until, Matai, when? Admatai, how long? Shuvah Yahuwah, Admatai. Thou, the I, didst reply, nay, no, but make Israel return first. Since thou wilt not return alone, and since I and I will not return alone, let make the two of us, I and I, return as one, as is said even in today's psalm, Mizmor Fei, hey, Mizmor Pe, hey, Mizmor Fei, hey, Psalm 85, Hebraically the 5th verse that reads, return both of us, return both of us, O God of our salvation. Shuvenu Elohe Yishaenu, return both of us. O Elohim of Einai Yeshua, of Einai victory, of Einai salvation. Shuvenu Elohe Yishaenu, return or restore both of us. Elohe Yishaenu, Elohe, Elohim of Yeshua, of our salvation, of our victory. Shuveinu, restore both of us. Elohe Yishaenu. And what is thine answer? Here, the next verse, today's daily psalm, the wow verse, Mizmor Pei, hey, Mizmor Fei, hey, Psalm 85, Hebraically the 6th verse, that reads, wilt thou be angry with us, with Einai forever? And what is thine answer? Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Hal olam te'anaf banu. Hal olam forever. Hal olam te'anaf banu. Wilt thou be angry with us? Te'anaf banu, against us. Banu, against Einai. Hal olam, forever, forever. If we repent, if I and I repent, have a change of heart and mind, wilt thou not receive us? Won't I receive I and I? Hear the Zayin verse Hebraically, Psalm 85, verse 7. Wilt thou, the I, not quicken us again? Wilt the I not revive, lively up I and I, give I and I life and liberty again? Hello, Ata Tashuv Techayenu. Hello, Ata, is it not the I and none other? Hello, Ata Tashuv Techayenu. Tashuv, to restore, to return. Techayenu, to give life, to lively, to enliven I and I, to revive I and I. Hello, Ata Tashu Techayenu, even as Ezekiel says in Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 12, behold, I will open your graves. Behold, I will open your graves. Lakena be we amarta eleihem kohamara Adonaya Yahweh hine ania poteach eta kerabotekem we ha eleiti et kema mia kibrotekem amia. Wehebeti etikema eladamat Yisrael. Hear the fuller verse. Therefore prophesy and say to them, Lake Hinabeya with Amarta Elehem. Therefore prophesy and say to them, Kohamara Adonai Yahuwah. Thus saith he, Adonai, Adonai, he who be who he, Adonai Yahuwah, Adonai Yahweh. Thus saith Adonai, Adonai, the sovereign, he who be who he be. Hine, behold, Hine, אני פותח את קרבותיכם. Behold, I will open, פותח, אני פותח את קרבותיכם. I will open קרבותיכם, your graves. והעליתי אתכם מקברותיכם עמי. And cause you, y'all, to come up, to aliyah up, to come up out of your grave. Oh, my people, with ha'elati, and I will be the aliyah upper of the island, cause you to come up. With ha'elati at the camp, niya kiboroteikem, ami. Oh, my people, with hebeti at the camp, illa adamat, Yisrael, and I will bring you with hebeti at the camp, il adamat, to the adamat, to the land, Yisrael, to the land of Yisrael, to the land of Israel. Lakena hinabe with amarta ilay. Hohamara Adonai Yahweh hineya aniya foteach et kebrotekem. Weha eleti etekem miya kebrotekem ami. Wehebeti etekem il adamat Yisrael. And again in Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 14, and I will put my spirit in you, and you shall live. And I will put my spirit, my iris, in you, in the eye, and the eye shall live. ונתתי רוחי בכם וחייתם, and I will put ונתתי רוחי, my spirit, my iris, בכם, in y'all, and I will put my spirit, my iris, in y'all. ונתתי רוחי בכם וחייתם, and y'all shall live. וחייתם, ונתתי רוחי בכם וחייתם, and I will put my spirit in you and y'all shall live. Here I midrash now. I will put my spirit in you. With natati rochi bakem, in y'all, in you all. This is the explanation of breath, the breath entering the bones to revive them, to lively them up. Israel's restoration could not be achieved by human power, but only by the Spirit of Elohim, the true good, the true God. Thus, with natati rochi bakem, v'yachyitem, and I will put my spirit, my iris, in you, in y'all, and y'all shall live.
Psalm 85. Lord, thou hast been favorable unto thy land. Thou hast brought back the captivity of Jacob. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Thou hast covered all their sin. Selah. Thou hast taken away all thy wrath. Thou hast turned thyself from the fierceness of thine anger. Turn us, O God of our salvation, and cause thine anger toward us to cease. Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Wilt thou draw out thine anger to all generations? Wilt thou not revive us again, that thy people may rejoice in thee? Show us thy mercy, O Lord, and grant us thy salvation. I will hear what God the Lord will speak, for he will speak peace unto his people and to his saints. But let them not turn again to folly. Surely his salvation is nigh them that fear him, that glory may dwell in our land. Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase. Righteousness shall go before him, and shall set us in the way of his steps. Righteousness shall go before him, 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 and shall set us in the way of his steps. Righteousness shall go before him, shall go before him, set us in the way, 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 set us in the way,
מזמור פ"ה, למנצח לבני קורח מזמור. רצית אדוני ארצך, שבת שביט יעקב. נשאת עוון עמך, כיסית כל חטאתם סלע. אספת כל עברתך, השיבות מחרון אפיך. שובנו אלוהי ישענו, והפר כעסך עמנו. הלעולם תאנף בנו, תמשוך אפיך לדור ודור. הלא אתה תשוב לחיינו, ועמך ישמחו בך. הראינו אדוני חסדך, וישעך תיתן לנו. אשמעה מה ידבר האל אדוני, כי ידבר שלום אל עמו ואל חסידיו, ואל ישובו לחסלה. אך קרוב לרעב ישעו, לשכון כבוד בארצנו. חסד ואמת נפגשו, צדק ושלום נשקו. אמת מארץ תצמח, וצדק משמיים נשקף. גם אדוני ייתן הטוב, וארצנו תיתן יבולה. צדק לפניו יהלך, וישם לדרך בעמיו.
new life.
out of it. With the vibration full of
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.